Modern science is man's attempt to explain creation without giving credit to the Creator. All right, that's one for you to think about for a while. Shalom and welcome to this week's Living Torah. As we get into the Torah portion of Noach, this is probably the most hotly contested Torah portion as we look at the flood of Noah. And this is just a reminder that we go back to Bereshit, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. And if we did not enter into that verse and exit from that verse with complete faith, not a complete knowledge, not a complete understanding, but a complete faith in that verse, then by the time we get to the second Torah portion, well, we've really come to a place of total confusion, which will be the end of this Torah portion. So go back to this. Modern science, and I say the word modern because science has changed through the years. There are many very, what I believe to be godly scientists. In fact, there are probably some today, but they are sidelined for the most part. But today, for the kind of a broad brush here, modern science has become a way for man to attempt to explain the creation, our place in this creation, but without giving any credit to the Creator. Therefore, you have to come up with evolutionary science. Cannot be, that is actually an oxymoron, because science, the very definition of science is that it is something that must be observable and must be able to be repeated over and over again with the same results. Well, when it comes to creation, none of us were able to observe this 6,000 years ago. The other aspect is that no one is able to reproduce it. Why? Because only the Creator can create. Now, with that, we get into the life of Noach. And it says, here's the history of Noach. Many translations will say generations, but there's a fascinating definition that I saw this morning as I was looking at this again, and it is the results. Here are the results of Noach's life. We could say it like this. Here is the why of Noach. Now we pick up the story, and Noach is. It says that he is a righteous man. He is perfect in his generation, as many translations would say. But the words here, of course, he is a Zadik and he is a Tamim. So he is a righteous man and he is wholehearted, but in what? In his generation. Let me submit a word to you here, that he is righteous and wholehearted in the revelation that he has been given. Now, what revelation does he have? Okay, he doesn't have a Torah. He doesn't have a scripture. He doesn't have multiple copies of the Bible. He does not have his favorite app on his iPhone, so he can go and learn these things. But so how is he learning? Well, Adam, when Noah comes on the scene, Adam has only been dead for about 100 years. Seth has been dead for about 10 years. So Noah would have known probably Enoch. He would, of course, known Methuselah. So a righteous man, a man who is wholehearted, will seek out other righteous men, others who are wholehearted toward Elohim. So the thought that Noach was just out there by himself with no support, with no one around him, it doesn't fit the scenario here. That he would have known about Adam. He would have had the stories of creation passed down, just a few generations out, really. 100 years earlier the guy who was part of the first chapter of Genesis, would have been able to tell those stories, and those accounts would have been passed on. So Noah is a man who has almost firsthand knowledge of creation. So the results of his righteousness are recorded for us starting in Genesis chapter 6. And in fact, if we think about it, the rest of Scripture is based upon his being righteous and wholehearted. We do have in this world, we do have a couple things in common. No matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter where you think you came from, no matter what part of the country or part of the world, we do have a couple of things in common. Number one is that our mutual ancestor is Noah and Mrs. Noah. Our mutual ancestor is Adam and Hava, Adam and Eve. Now, interesting, we'd never see that what Noah's wife's name is. Why weren't we given her name? Because the Scripture is not about so much revealing people as it is revealing the covenant. And the establishment of the covenant is firmly placed in this point in history on the shoulders of Noah. If Noah does not proceed, if he does not say hineni, yes, to the word to build the boat, we don't have the rest of Scripture. It is non-existent because humankind has now been wiped off the earth. But because the Almighty, when he made a promise to Adam and Eve, that he would, Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, that he would restore that which Adam and Eve had broke, then it is now his responsibility to bring forth that covenant. And he finds a man who is willing to cooperate with him in this. Now, the word says in verse 11 that the earth was violent. He says, I will, let's go back to, verse 11. The earth was corrupt before Elohim. The earth was filled with violence. Elohim saw the earth, and yes, it was corrupt, and all living beings had corrupted their ways on the earth. The word here is, it is rotting. Okay? And we could say it like this. The earth is rotting due to perversion and violence. Now, if you've watched the news in the last few days, you might kind of think that the same thing is happening today. Well, guess what? It is. It is the same thing that happened. And Yeshua would say in Matthew chapter 24 that it would be as in the days of Noah. So we see this perversion that is happening on the earth. We see the violence, as all of us know, in Hebrew it is the word Hamas. We see the violence, the Hamas that is covering the earth, I dare say, through the religion of Islam. And in the process of this, he is called to establish, in verse 18, a reminder, but I will establish my covenant with you. You will come into the ark, your sons, your wife, your sons' wives with you. Now, if we do a little bit of study here, we find out that Noah, it appears at the time, does not have children. Okay, so he is prophesying of the sons and daughter-in-laws that are going to be coming into the ark with him. So not only is he going to be saved when he begins to build that ark, it's not just about saving him and his wife, but also his children and their spouses, so that what? They can be fruitful and multiply. The purpose of the ark is a fulfillment of the first commandment given to Adam and Eve. so that they would be able to be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and bring forth the covenant. All right, the word there is cum, Q-U-M. It is a word that means to arise, to stand up, and establish. So, as I've taught before, this is not that the Almighty is making a new covenant. Okay, we don't have a New Testament in that day. We have a renewed covenant. We have an establishment of the covenant. And so this will hold true when we see the covenant given to Noah, covenant given to Abraham, or Abram at the time, covenant given, and Abraham, covenant given to David, the so-called renewed covenant. These are all establishments. These are all moments in history in which the covenant of Genesis chapter 3 verse 15 is being brought forth. It is as if we can consider it like this, that there are times that it appears that that covenant is sitting down. And there are times that it arises, that it stands up, and that he is looking for a man, a woman, in order to have that covenant stand up through them. Is he looking for people in our day? I believe so. Now, it says that Noah began to build the ark. Was Noah a builder by trade? I don't think so, because in chapter 9, verse 20, it says Noah is a farmer. Is this the same aspect that we see in the life of Adam? When Adam is told to be fruitful and multiply, he doesn't have the ability to be fruitful and multiply. Think about that. It's kind of, there is a bit of an irony there that to me is funny, that he doesn't have, I could say he does not have within himself the ability to be fruitful and multiply. But yes, he does have within himself the ability. It's called Eve. And so when Eve comes forth from inside of Adam, he can now fulfill the commandment. So the same thing holding true with Noah. Though I don't see that he is a builder by trade, we all know that a farmer can do pretty much anything. Okay, if you've ever had any type of a farm, you know that you have to have some talents. But let's face it, building an ark, which is like 150 feet by 450 feet, and it is 75 feet in height. 450 feet by 75 feet. Its height was 45 feet. This is a bit of a challenge for a guy that's used to growing crops, wouldn't you say? So the ability to do this is resident inside of him. Now, in that day, if Noah is, he's kind of called to build the first ark, I would doubt that anyone had ever built an ark before. There were you couldn't go on your favorite online search and order the blueprints for the ark that somebody else had made. You couldn't go to YouTube and find out, 10 simple ways to build an ark. It wasn't there. So what did he have to do? He had to trust the Almighty to bring forth something through him that had never been done before. If you didn't get that message, rewind it. Okay, well, let me just say it again. He had to trust the Almighty to bring forth through him something that had never been done before. Are we available if that is what he is looking for today? Now, in chapter 7, it says that only 8 came in. Only 8 people came into the ark. Noah, his wife, his sons, and his daughter-in-laws, their wives. What about all the other people? There are estimates that with all the, as it would be said, the begatting that people were doing in that day and living the amount of time that they were living, it is it is possible, some have said, that there were as many as 6 billion people on the face of the earth. Okay, if you're living and you're being fruitful and multiplying over a few hundred years, that's going to be a big family. And so there could have been literally billions of people upon the face at that time. When Noah was given the original instructions here, do you not think it went through his mind that, well, we have, all of this room here. I'm sure that I'm going to be able to affect somebody else's life through my words. All right, it's hard to build an ark of that size in secret. He didn't build it inside a garage. He did not hide his work from everyone else. By the time Noah got this ark built, he was probably pretty famous. There were probably people coming, and there was like the Noah's Ark like we have today up in Ohio. There's the Noah's Ark that the Institute for Creation Research built, and people come from literally all over the world to see that ark. Well, here's the original. It's probably somebody's coming up, the travel agent of that day has probably come up with a come see Noah build the ark tour. And this is restaurants and food trucks being, brought in around this, and it's being turned into quite an attraction. Is that really outside of the scope of imagination? I mean, if you heard that the next town over from you, some wacko is building a boat that's 450 feet long and 75 feet wide, don't you think you'd take the family over? You'd probably get a little picnic lunch, and let's go over and see the crazy person as he's building this boat. So in the process of this, being the Zadik and being Tamim toward the Almighty, righteous and wholehearted in his revelation, in the revelation that he has been given, he is wholehearted toward that. Let you maybe fill in some blanks with that one on your own. So he is in 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 5, he is called a preacher of righteousness. So he is not only building the boat, he is thinking that, okay, we've got 2 of the unclean animals, we've got 7 of the clean animals. Now there's room. There's room on this ark for other people. Is it out of the scope of imagination that Noah not only had his 3 sons helping him, but was employing other people? I mean, I think that if I would have been given the task in that day of building that size boat, I would have said to Mrs. Noah, we need more children. All right? We need a bigger crew here. So it's him, it's 3 boys, and he's probably he is employing other people in this task that he has been given. At the same time that he's doing that, he is preaching to them how to be righteous, how to be wholehearted before their Creator. So it's outside of his thoughts that there would be no one on that ark except for the 8 of them. I think this will maybe hit pretty close to home with a word of comfort for each of us. Noah, in his day, was a complete failure. Okay. Noah, in his day, in our eyes, in the eyes of mankind, was a complete failure. Now, if people were, as it says, perverse, and they were violent, what's the chances that they'd come up with their own gods? What's the chances that they were building their own temples? What's the chances those temples were filled with people that were seeking their own perversions, while when Noah took Shabbat off, all right, because Adam had died 100 years prior, Seth had died about 10 years prior, Enoch was teaching Noah, give me a little license here, Enoch was teaching Noah the ways that were given to Adam, going all the way back to the eating of the tree of life. And so Noah, in my mind, was guarding Shabbat. Think about that. He was guarding Shabbat. He knew the difference between clean and unclean animals. When the Almighty tells him, you're to take 2 of everything that's unclean, you're to take 7 of those that are clean, he did not have to ask him, could you explain that to me? Because he had already had it explained unto him. So he is, in man's eyes, he is the failure. He doesn't have the largest congregation on the block. He doesn't have the largest congregation in the city. His services, whatever that is, consisted of himself and 7 other people. He was the one that everybody kind of looked down upon. Okay, these are just thoughts that I have. Well, with that, he is responsible for being the preacher of righteousness, yes, but he is not responsible for those who reject his message, which is the message of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. We are not responsible to carry the burden of a person who rejects. We are not called. Now, we can pray for them until the very end. In fact, you've heard me say that our prayer, our breathing does not affect the answer to our prayer. We can pray something and die not realizing the answer that is going to be. Okay? I saw that with my dear friend John Faust. He prayed for things in my life that never came to pass in his life. But yet they are still, to this day, I believe, coming to pass in my life. So we can pray up until the very end. We don't know what may happen after that time. But for Noah, he is the preacher of righteousness, and he is not held responsible for those who reject the message. You and I believe, need to give ourselves a break, that it is not my responsibility for their answer. It is only my responsibility to lay the question before them. All right, moving on. In chapter 7, verse 12, it tells us that it rained on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. Now, we've, here in North Carolina, western North Carolina, we have just gone through the storm Helena, the hurricane. By the time it got up here, it was a tropical storm, I believe, or Cat 1, maybe in some parts. We had rain in this area for about 3 days. Debris. I was talking with a friend of mine the other day. His brother lives up in the area around Mars Hill, north of Asheville. It is best known right now for the area called Chimney Rock. And he said that there was a report that debris from that area is being found in the rivers in Knoxville, Tennessee. Now, that is just over 100 miles. But not only is it just over 100 miles, which if you go to, like, Montana or Oklahoma or somewhere like that. 100 miles takes you less than 100 minutes. It is less than 2 hours. It's an hour and a half drive pretty much to go 100 miles. Not in the mountains, because here 100 miles, you pull it up on your maps and you're like 100 miles. Great. I got, I'll give myself 2 hours, and then you hit the direction button and it says it's going to take you 2.5 hours to get there. Why? Because of all of the mountains that you got to, there's not a lot of straight roads around us. And so consider that some of these rivers could have been, well over 100 miles in the twists and turns. And they're finding debris and other things, I won't go into that, as far away as Knoxville. And that's 3 days. People that I'm seeing on the news and we're talking to are saying, I grew up in this area and I went back to a specific place that I knew everything about that place. I knew where every house was. I know where the stores are. I know where the roads are, and nothing is there. Why? Because of 3 days, approximately 3 days. It wasn't the wind so much. It was the amount of rain. Now, consider that's 3 days. Take that into 40 days and 40 nights. That it says the waters of the deep and the vapor canopy. This is not just a storm, a few clouds going on. This is a whole canopy of moisture that is collapsing upon the earth over this time period of almost a month and a half. The destruction that was in that day is overwhelming. The closest thing, I've seen destruction in Alaska. I've seen some avalanches. Of course, Kathy and I had a tornado that went over our house. We know what destruction looks like, but not at that place. Not at that place can we even understand this. And so science, modern science, in an attempt to explain creation, came up with things that are against the scripture. But because, there was nothing to base it on, people are like, oh, well, I guess that is what happened, that it's, it's not 6 days, but it's 6 million years, and now it's 6 billion years, and, by the time the next textbook is translated, is put out, it'll be, 6 trillion years, whatever. So people were like, well, we got to come up with an excuse until Mount St. Helen. If you've ever, I hope you've done some research into creation science, Institute for Creation Research. If you've never done that, they've got some fantastic resources. One of the best that they did, in my opinion, regarding this, is right after Mount St. Helen blew its top, back at, the 1980s. They looked at the topography of what happened in that day, and they related it to the book of Genesis and to Noah's flood. And guess what? A fossil does not happen by, your cat gets away and goes out in the woods and dies, and, a million years later you find a cat fossil there. No, it is the instantaneous death with massive amounts of mud and water. That's how a fossil is formed. Different layers of the earth. Get that video that was done, documentary that was done. It's fascinating. But that's not we got to go back. We're getting into the what there, which is interesting to me, but it's the why. The why is about the covenant. The scripture is about the why behind the scripture is the covenant being established, brought forth upon this earth. So when Noah, the preacher of righteousness, puts him, his wife, his family, he is probably pleading with others to get on the boat. There's the food trucks. I'll be back in just a few minutes. Or Noah, I need to go get a taco. Noah, this food truck. I mean, I've been dying. I've been dying to eat from this food truck. Yeah, that's going to be true, because you chose the food truck over the ark. You're going to die in the flood. And it says in chapter 7, verse 16, thus, or those that entered went in, male and female, from every kind of a living being, as Elohim had ordered them, and Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh shut the door. He had to. I don't believe that Noah could have shut that door. After speaking to all these people through these years, it is beyond my comprehension that this man who had poured himself into these people, preaching judgment through these years, would have been able to shut that door. He likely, if he had been able to shut the door, when it began to rain and people began to beat on this outside of the ark, he would have, by nature, opened the door, and his family would have died in the flood. Because the flood is about the covenant being established upon the earth, it was Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh himself who shut the door and then did not allow it to be opened. Now, in verse 17, it says that the ark rose above. So he rose above the destruction. I could go into some things about pre-trib rapture and stuff, and it's in Matthew chapter 24. The Left Behind series is all based upon the wrong people being left behind. All right, but in the midst of Noah and his family being left behind, they still went through the time of tribulation and turbulence, but they were given an ark in order to rise above the circumstances and not be affected by the death that was the tribulation and the turbulence. There's a great message in there for all of us, that I personally feel that we will go through whatever is in front of us. And here we are in an election week. I haven't even mentioned that. By the next time I do a Living Torah, it's possible that we might even know who the president is. But is that going to change the fact that the earth is filled with perversion and violence? I haven't made a political statement in 35 minutes. Is it going to matter who is elected? Will that change the fact that this earth is filled with perversion and with violence? I don't believe so. Because I've said many times, you cannot solve a spiritual problem with a political solution. Can things be changed for a time? Yes, not saying that it can't. But as far as where I see this world going, we are headed farther and deeper into perversion and violence. Now, as in chapter 8, it said that the ark landed on Mount Ararat after these 40 days, after the waters beginning to recede. Noah ends up looking out of that ark. He sends a raven. He sends a dove. The dove finally comes back with an olive branch, a leaf that is significant of peace, of shalom. The destruction is literally over, which is part of that word. And Noah comes out of the ark. Now, Imagine if we are able to come close to what the earth looks like now is in Noah's day is nothing like what it looked like when he shut the door. There was a window that is up on the top for ventilation. That window is not, he probably is not able to see out of that window during the storm. All he's doing is he's feeling the results within the boat. It is rocking. It is tipping. It is, because of the structure, because of the dimensions, it is the most stable. It's still used. That architecture is still used. Engineering is still used today in modern shipping. But he's still in the midst of it. I mean, somebody's probably getting seasick along the way. He's not able to see what's going on. When he steps out of the ark, the world has changed. I'll never forget just a small one that on May 10th, the evening of May 10th, after a tornado went over our house, we were in a Connex storage container. And when I opened the door of that Connex and looked out, I barely could recognize the property that we were on. The trees, the buildings, we were walking around and go, okay, now where were we? Where are we? I was just talking to some friends the other day when I was in Norman, Oklahoma, right after the tornado that went through there early 2000s, I believe it is. The asphalt of the streets, some of the asphalt was actually taken up off the ground. The destruction. People come back into a neighborhood, they don't know where their house is. Because you're used to seeing, well, there's my mailbox, there's this person's house, there's the park, and now it's leveled. There's nothing there. Imagine his thoughts. And what does the man do? He builds an altar. In the midst of the destruction, in the midst of the changes of the world, Noah builds an altar. The first thought that he has is toward his Creator. And because of that, he again receives a promise that I will establish my covenant through you. And then he says, I will not destroy this world again. He gives the sign of the rainbow. Which, by the way, I was going to go online and research this. But of course, we have a symbol of a rainbow today within a group of people, but that symbol is missing one color. And I can't remember, I believe I know, but I'm not sure of it. So if you'd like, and then remember what the colors, every color in Scripture, every color in the world, it has some type of a meaning. Okay, blue is the heavens, purple would be the royalty, the authority of Elohim, and I'm thinking it's purple, but I'm not quite sure. But go online and check that out. It's an amazing message of how in the midst of the debauchery, it's actually a slap in the face to the Creator. So he, being a farmer, plants a vineyard. And the next thing we know is he gets drunk. Okay? He drinks of the vineyard. Well, it's easy for us to, in 4 or 5 verses, okay, in verse 20, Noah, a farmer, was the first to plant a vineyard. Okay? In the next verse, he drank so much wine that he got drunk. Okay? Well, if Noah was taught the instructions of the Torah by Enoch, and by Methuselah, then he would not have been taking that wine at least for 5 years. He would have planted the vineyards. He would have then waited for the grapes. The first year we see in Scripture. So this is 5 years down the line. And somebody wants to judge this man. what is sin, what his lack of judgment brought forth in this day is something that we'll talk about when we get over to the book of Leviticus. The uncovering of his father's nakedness. This is not just that, that his son was, walking in there and looking at dad, okay? This is spoken of in Leviticus. We'll get to that later on. This brought forth, this mistake of judgment brought forth. It revealed something that it was in one of his sons anyway. That's another one, okay? But because of this, because of his mistaken judgment, I'll give it to him as that, it brought forth unrighteousness in the earth. But I got to give the guy a break, okay? If you and I would have walked out of that ark, it would have taken 5 years for us to make a mistake of judgment. I'm going to give Noah a pass on this one, even though the consequences are very stern. But I'm not going to stand and be the first one to cast stones at this man for being overwhelmed by the conditions of the earth. Now, chapter 10 talks about that the people now they've been fruitful, they've multiplied, and they're speaking different dialects. All right, they're speaking the same language, but it appears that they're speaking different dialects, because it says in verse 5 of chapter 10, it's that each according to his language. But then it talks about they were all speaking one language. So this is not a contradiction. One is talking about dialects. Now in chapter 11 we see that, first of all, it came to about that they had traveled from the east and found a plain in the land of Shinar and lived there. Brad Scott of blessed memory would always speak of this being when they traveled from the east. And I'm not sure how, I never got a chance to really sit down and talk with him about this, of that they were traveling away from the ancient paths. It was not just because they were actually going east from probably where they were. This is not as much about direction of their being. It's not about the physical direction they're moving. It is about the spiritual direction they are moving. They're leaving their ancient paths. They're leaving the one that Daniel would call the Ancient of Days. They're walking away from the commandments, the instructions that were given through Adam, through Seth, through Enoch, through Methuselah, through Noah. They're leaving those things and trying to find their own way, which would lead them to a place called Shinar, which is what we would look at today as Babylon. And the word Babylon is defined as a confusion that is based upon mixing. Mixture brings forth confusion. As we've just gone through the last couple of days of October 31st. Okay? It is called by some All Saints' Day. Then you look at it. You look at what it is. We have actually in Franklin, we had last week, I didn't know this existed, but we have the Witches' Walk. Now, Franklin is known as a pretty conservative area. But a few years ago, on a church sign, it said, be like a jack-o'-lantern, be a light to all the world. That's confusion. That's chaos. That's mixture. We're entering into this time in December that is what? It is a mixture. And so anytime, this is why into the congregation in Laodicea, I wish that you were either hot or cold. But because you're lukewarm, I'm going to spew you out of my mouth. What is lukewarm? It is what my coffee has gone to. Actually, it's now cold. I started out with hot, pretty much got to the end, but there's just a little bit at the bottom that's cold. If you took it to another level, it'd be iced coffee, which would be actually pretty good. So you want it either hot, you want it either cold, but when it's lukewarm, that last sip can just stay in the cup because it's really good for nothing. And so when we embrace the ways, when we leave our ancient paths and say the Torah is done away with, then we end up in a place of Babylon, a place of confusion, a place of mixture. In verse 3, it says that they made bricks for themselves. So they had bricks for building, stone and clay in the mortar. And this is the difference, that man was not called to build an altar of bricks. He was called to build an altar of stones. When you go to Israel, Joshua's altar is built of stones. It is not built of bricks. The difference is that a brick is something that you mold into each brick is all very much close to the same. If you build a brick house and you call the brick company and you order a truckload of bricks and they all come in different sizes, different colors, different textures, and different strengths, you're probably going to call the company back and tell them, come get these bricks. I'm getting them from someone else. So bricks always are the same thing. It's about a people who have been molded into lockstep thinking the same thing. So today, let's put it into today's terms, you have, and I'm not going to get political with this, you can put everything in however you'd like, but you have a group of people that everyone has to think the same. If someone comes in with a different idea, it is not accepted. You must destroy that person in some way, shape, or form. The Almighty never called us to be bricks. He's called us to be stones. Having our own thoughts, our own ways of expression of His Word. Okay, if I for Shabbat, I know people that light 2 candles, some that light a menorah of 7 candles, some people that don't light candles. What is my way of expression of wearing tzitzit? Is it a talit katan? Is it a talit? Is it on the bell loops? What is my expression? That is the seeking of fulfilling the commandments, the instructions, but yet appreciating each other's differences. Now it says that they were in what is this? Verse 4. Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that has its top reaching into the heaven, and we can make a name for ourselves. The word is asah. The same word as was when the skins were brought to Adam and Eve. It says that the Creator brought life into the skins. But here, they want to make for themselves a name. Are we? One person taught it this way: that they called themselves God. When we're bringing life into, trying to bring our life into work that is us based instead of Him based, then we're bringing life into something that is not of Him. One last thing, the word Babel. They're going to Babel. It is Beit Lamed. Okay? Beit lamed in Hebrew. The word beit is a house. The letter beit is a house. Excuse me. The letter lamed is the king. So this word in Babylon, this word Babel, is about us making both houses the king. And in our day, it is the words of Elijah the prophet, choose this day. I'm going to retranslate this a little bit. Choose this day whose house you're going to live in. We can't live in both houses. Either the ways of this world or the ways of our Creator have to be, we have to choose whose house are we going to live in. Let us choose wisely. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. Have a blessed, prosperous week. As we see the election coming, this is going to be an interesting week for all of us. I know that. I'm probably going to delay my Living Tour broadcast one day next week to maybe be after the elections. So that's not a shadow over us, but who knows if it's still going to be a shadow. I don't know. All right. Very good. Bezrat Hashem. God willing. See you again next week. Until then, be strong.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.